And now we'll just have that 15-second delay that I warned you about that Facebook is famous for as they stream it over and we connect to our mighty mystery fans. Everyone's so excited to talk to you today, all the way from Dublin. Yay! And we are live. Welcome, mighty mystery fans. I'm your on-air host, Sarah DeVello, and I'm thrilled to be hosting Eithne Shortall all the way from Dublin today as her book, Three Little Truths, makes its U.S. debut. We're thrilled to have it stateside, thrilled to have Eithne with us today. Eithne, welcome. Tell us about your book.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. So my book is Three Little Truths, which I have beside me like this. I love the cover so much that I'm proud to be caught beside it regularly. Three Little Truths, it's about three women living on a suburban road in Dublin, middle class, quite affluent area, but it centres around the character of Martha, who moves to Dublin from another part of Ireland in mysterious circumstances. And she manages to get her kids into the local secondary school, even though it's oversubscribed and nobody else living on this road can get their kids in. And nobody knows why she moves, and she's avoiding all questions. So there's a neighbourhood WhatsApp group on Pine Road, and they're determined to get to the bottom of it. So the book is interspersed with all these WhatsApp conversations between all the residents. And so, yeah, Martha is the focus, but then we also have the character of Edie, who's in her 20s, and she has, she's married, she's got a house, and she wants a baby, and she's really trying to get in with all the neighbours on Pine Road. She wants to be one of the girls, and she's very nice, and she's probably trying too hard, and she's also trying to figure out why her husband isn't as eager to have this baby as she is. And then the third character is Robin, who's moved home to live with her parents, bringing her 4-year-old son with her. Her relationship that she leaves behind, well, I can't say too much about that, but that's the mystery, basically. And these three women get to know each other, and it turns out that in ways all their stories and all their lives are interconnected.
Ooh. Well, I know I am hooked. I love your gorgeous US cover. Oh, it's so stunning, and I
like it more than the UK cover, to be honest. So yeah, I think they did a great job with it.
It's absolutely beautiful, although I also like the UK one, but this one is just, oh, it's so pretty. So I'm so excited to chat with you about it and to get into all the mystery and thriller talk. I want to welcome all our friends on Facebook. If you've been here before, you know how it works. And if you're new here, welcome, welcome. This is how it works. This is your time with the author. We give you direct access so you can ask our featured author of the day, Eithne Shortall, any questions that you have about her process, about her practice, about her writing, about her books. You can ask anything that's been weighing on your brain, except for the ending. We're not giving that away. So go ahead and type your questions in the comments box, and my partner in crime, pun intended, Margaret Bernard, will get that right over to us. So I'll be monitoring the chat box. Margaret will be managing things on Facebook. So go ahead and get your questions going. Now, I know it always takes me a minute to think of them. So while that's happening, I have got to share just a few words of the incredible praise that Eithne has earned with this book. So Pop Sugar naming it one of the 21 most exciting new releases hitting bookshelves in October. Wow, I love Pop Sugar. Betches, another favorite. Who doesn't love Betches? Naming it to their fall 2020 reading list. And CNN, wow, including this in their best books of October roundup. Eithne, incredible praise. Also earning praise from industry review places, Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, Booklist, Publishers Weekly raving Shortall explores the fine line between friendship and enmity. In this thoroughly enjoyable novel centered on a group of women neighbors, readers will soak up this smart, entertaining plunge into a community's dysfunctional culture. Secrets and subplots abound. Ooh, yum. I love a good subplot. Kirkus raving that you tackle many complicated issues relating to self-esteem, parenting, interpersonal connections. This is a lighthearted romp through an Irish community filled with characters that are as dysfunctional as they are delightful. Wow, I love that. Booklist chiming in with this is a combination of Sally Hepworth's The Family Next Door and Leanne Moriarty's Big Little Lies. Who didn't love that? This work is an excellent exploration of the inner workings of one Dublin neighborhood, a top-notch read for those looking for depth and a little humor. Wow, Eithne, incredible, incredible praise that you have earned. So you're a journalist, you're an author. Tell us from a craft perspective, how did you go about writing a book that gets that kind of praise, that is deep, that has all those subplots? Tell us about that.
I think, well, it depends, but I think with Three Little Truths, I spent so long plotting. I would say I spent as long plotting as I did actually writing, because like, it felt like I was doing the most complicated braid of all time. I had all these strings coming in different directions, you know, and so I was, which I hadn't done with my previous book, but I was that person that had all the post-it notes on the floor, different color-coded ones, trying to move them around, because you need it to look like nothing is connected. Like that's what Three Little Truths, or sorry, that's what Big Little Lies does. And everywhere that book has come out so far, it's gotten comparisons, which is brilliant, but also like a little bit embarrassing, because I love that book so much, you know, that I just think it's untouchable actually. But I'm honored, of course. And I think that's what that book does as well. It tells you individual stories of 3 or 4 characters, and yet somehow by the end they're all the one story, you know. So actually it kind of makes it difficult to say what it's about, because if you give away too much, you're telling what the connection is between all the characters, I guess.
Right, exactly. And it's such a delicate balance. Well, first of all, how long did it take you to write this book? Let's focus on the plotting first. How long did it take you to plot it? Then how long did it take you to write it soup to nuts, A to Z? Tell us about that.
Well, the whole thing, like the whole first draft, it was the quickest book by far that I've ever written. It took 3 months, which was, for me, is so fast. Usually my books take 9 months. It's like, it's a pregnancy usually, you know. But this one was very early. No, but what happened actually was I had spent 6 months writing a book that I just couldn't finish, that I hated, that I, like, it's so easy to say this after the fact, to say you spent 6 months doing something you hated, because I can say that in one sentence, but to live that day in, day out, look, it's not like I was down the mines, but it's a horrible feeling to go to the desk, a job that should be joyous, and to feel like it's torture, you know. And so after 6 months, I scrapped the book completely that I was working on. I was 3 months away from my deadline at that point, so I started writing the book I was thinking about, which was Three Little Truths. And so I wrote the first 20,000 words in a week, which was just phenomenally fast. And then after that, I had to go and plot, and that took, I don't know, I would say half the time was plotting and half the time was writing. But I wrote so quickly. I mean, I'm writing my next book at the moment, and it is taking me a lot longer. So, but the story for Three Little Truths was in my head the whole time I was writing the book. I did not want to be writing, so it was ready to go once I actually let it go, you know.
Wow, I love that. And I think, I mean, there's so much there that I want to talk about, including the fact that sometimes it doesn't, we feel this pressure that it should feel joyous, because it is, as you said, not down the mines. We are honored, we're privileged to be able to do this work.
Yeah.
And yet sometimes it is really hard, and sometimes it doesn't come easily. So how do you, as you know, an experienced author, as a journalist, how do you know when it's time to just keep pushing, keep chugging, keep making yourself do it, and when it's time to just walk away?
I find that question so hard, and I would like to ask you that, and every other author that, because I just find that so impossible, because writing, up until the point, well, I don't show it to anyone until I send it to my editor or my agent. So up until that point, you're completely on your own, and you start to feel insane, because you're like, has what I've written, is it great, or is it like, have I actually just written all work and no play makes Eithne a dull girl over and over again when I go back, you know? Like, you step away from the desk and you think, what did I actually do there? And you read back over it and you're like, is this terrible or is this great? Or, you know, it's probably somewhere in between. I don't know is the answer. The reason I stopped on that book after 6 months was I physically could not make myself write another word. You know, I just found it nauseating. I felt ill at the idea of having to do it. And I felt a lot of pressure, because I had been paid in advance. I had already received money for the book. and I'm a good worker, and I was a good student, and I give my stuff in on time, and I felt like I must deliver this, but no amount of money was worth it, because a book, it's a piece of art and it's a piece of you, and you don't want to put it out if you're not happy with it. But I mean, I don't know. Do you have an answer to that question? How do you know when it's worth continuing with, and how do you know when it's worth getting rid of?
You know what? I don't know. And that's something that I struggle with, because the book that I'm working on right now, which is book number 2 for me, actually came to me as I was working on another book number 2. And I was far down that road. I was 45 to 50,000 words into that book. And I was 6 months into that book. And I was so excited about the idea. But it just wasn't happening for me. It just wasn't coming to fruition. And it wasn't, I was struggling and I was flailing. It was really a bit of a flail, which is not, exactly. That's what it was. A drowning flail, a drowning, choking flail. Exactly. That was it. And I couldn't figure out, how to, I also couldn't find, I knew all the characters and I knew their internal struggles, but I couldn't figure out how to get that on the page in a really compelling way. I couldn't find the tension. And then I realized that maybe I just wasn't, maybe there wasn't a story there, and maybe I had thought there was, but maybe it wasn't going to be a long-term relationship. Maybe it was just more of a fling. And so I put that one away, because I also had this other one in my, that had come to call. It was, ringing my bell.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll just put that one in a drawer for a bit and focus on this other one. And so I don't know, it is, and I'm still not done. That one that I put the first one aside for, yeah. I'm still not done. And to be honest, I'm 6 years in. It's a very involved story. It's a true crime. So I had to do all of the research of the crime, and then all of the characters involved. I totally underestimated how long that research would take. But I'm at the stage now where I'm like, oh my God, I just want to be done.
I know, and there is also a danger, I think, that you could do that every time, always get to, for me, it's 20,000 words, and then go, no, actually, I'm going to start something else. Because my favorite book, and people say, what's your favorite book? My favorite one is always the one I haven't started yet. So I'm nearly finished writing my next book. And so I have the idea for the one after, and it's so perfectly formed in my mind because I haven't messed it up by trying to write it out yet, So that's the best one. It's perfect until you try to put it on the page. And that's what happens every time. And yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. And when you envision it, and it's this perfect, sort of,
you're like, Pulitzer, here I come, and then you put it on the page and you're like, is this book for 4-year-olds? It's just
exactly. I'm the only one who thinks this is any good. And I loved your analogy of braiding, of weaving them together. So how did you actually do that? So with the Post-it notes, how were you braiding them?
Yeah, I know. And I have photos from when I was writing this book, and it looks like I was planning a murder. Like, it's so intricate, and the thing is that it's not a murder. And so often mysteries are about a dead body. And so what I was really aiming to do was to write a mystery that wasn't who killed this person, just to show that you could have these twisty elements in other kinds of books, that it could be about suburbia and, domesticity to an extent, but it could still have twists and turns. And so when I started the book, I have a rule of thirds. I think something needs to happen at the first third and the second third, and then, you have the climax at the end. And so I had a twist for each of those thirds. But as I went, I could see new kind of sprouts, shooting off in different side directions, and I would let them go to a certain extent. And then I was only allowed to continue down that path if I could figure out a way that it would weave back into the main storyline, if you know what I mean. So I give myself free run for the first 20,000 words, and then I need to start plotting how all this stuff is connected. And I don't know, it felt like it hurt my brain. It was like maths, and I liked maths as well as English at school, so or math, as you say. So I found that quite satisfying when you figure out a way that they're actually, all these ends are going to tie together. It's like you solved the equation, and I enjoy that almost as much as the writing, almost, I think. But I don't know, I can't really remember exactly blow by blow, except that there were a lot of colored Post-it notes, and I rewrote the middle third many times.
How many times would you say?
I would say, like, because I basically I get like a third, a good version of third, then I move on to the next third. So I spent 2/3 of my time writing 1/3 of the book. If you know what I mean. So that was the middle bit. So I don't know how many times, because it would have been segments, but it took me, more than twice as long as any other part of the book. I sometimes I think about that. If a book is 100,000 words, I'm like, I definitely wrote 500,000 words, at different points, and they just get scrapped. Chapters go, you rewrite whole chapters. Like if you think about it at the end, you just be like, you'd cry, but you can't, because actually I really believe that thing that you can write chapters that don't get used, but you figured something out in that time, something about the character. You're not going to give that detail about them in the book, but it, and then all their actions thereafter make more sense. Or at least I tell myself that, so I don't feel like I've wasted weeks of my life.
I love that. And it's so interesting that you said that about, if your book is 100,000 words, you can be sure you've written 500, because one of my questions to you is, as a journalist, and, journalists have to be so much tighter. You don't have 100,000 words. You don't have 10 hours to sit and read this book, or 15 hours, or however long it might take a reader to read that story. So I was wondering, has that taught you to be, or forced you to be, a tighter reader? They always say, like, you're an underwriter or an overwriter. So you end up with just a skeleton and you're like, oh, I got to flesh this out. Or you end up like me with a bloated corpse and you've got to, tighten it up. Which one are you? And
well, I think that journalists, like a lot of journalists write books, or they go from one profession to the other. And I used to be a full-time journalist. I'm not anymore. But the good sides of journalism for writing are, you can take critiques, you can take criticism, you can take edits. You're also really good with deadlines, although with the current book I'm writing, that's not the case, but I blame the pandemic. But there's loads of good sides. But I do think the downside that you have to fight against when you're a journalist is that inclination to underwrite, to just give the basic facts. This happened, this happened, this happened, and not really, because in journalism you don't give the atmosphere and all the thoughts that go around that. And so I think that when I'm writing books, I'm really fighting against this craft, this completely different craft that I honed over many years, which is keep it as short as possible, and that does work for journalism, but it doesn't work for a book, because if you're paying like $18 or whatever, you don't want 2 pages. So, you got to keep going. And so I do, it's not the word count, it's more that, I can skip descriptions and just like write the dialogue and not bother with the in-between bits, and so I have to go back and fill that in, and I basically do the journalist version and then I go back and do the author version, I guess, and kind of decorate it a bit, I guess.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And then I just saw that you tweeted something that you said that you're working on a love scene, and it was so fun for you that you actually are thinking about segueing into YA. Is that true? Or are you actually thinking of that?
Well, I always think about it. Like, my favorite show, well, the show that had the biggest impact on me of all time is Dawson's Creek. And I loved it so much. Like, Pacey, my God, I just was besotted with him. And I think he's ruined all men for me, including my current partner. But I've always thought I'd love to write something like that. I mean, in book form. And I love teen movies, and I like books about teens. What I was tweeting was that it's one scene in the book I'm working, there's one teenage character, and there's a scene where him and his girlfriend get together, and I loved writing that because I just think young romance is so exciting. I mean, it's more of a challenge to write about married relationships or long-term relationships, because it's not the sparky spark and it's not the doom at the end. It's the in-between, and it's not less interesting, it's less dramatic. And so you have to show how, emptying the dishwasher is actually a sign of forgiving the other person, or, putting the bins out means I love you, or, something like that. But the drama of young love, when it's like, if you don't understand that these lyrics I love make me think of you, I will die now, like the absolute drama of it. And so I have actually been thinking about during the pandemic that I would like to write a YA novel, and an editor spoke to me about that kind of vaguely earlier in the year, and it's definitely something I have in the back of my head that I would like to do, and I have a couple of ideas, but I haven't fleshed them out. That idea isn't like living in my head pushing at the edges, but it is something I would like to do for sure.
So you want to try different genres, and then do you think you'd come back to this mystery element, or would you be dual, or would you jump, or or you're just
Yeah,
going to
like,
see how it goes?
when I wrote Three Little Truths, I wrote it so quickly that I thought, oh, 3 months. I mean, there were redrafts after that, but 3 months first draft, that's great. That means I can write, 3 books a year. But I mean, that was just a fluke. That is not what's happening. I mean, the book I'm working on now, I've been working on for almost a year and I'm not done yet. So it's taking obviously longer than that. So it's more about time, but I think that you can have two genres or three or whatever happening concurrently, and like, or screenwriting is another possibility and stuff like that. But like I had my first kid last year and I do journalism as well, and so it's hard to find the time at the moment, but I hope that next year it will be possible for me to do two different projects. So one will be another book in a similar genre to Three Little Truths, and then maybe the other project will be YA, but I don't know, I haven't fully decided.
I love it because I think there's so much pressure in the industry to be, to commit to your genre and then build a fan base so that when your next book comes out, the fan base is just like, rabidly like excited for your book, and then that's going to work well for the sales of, for the publisher.
So much. It's just basically give us the same book again, but slightly better. Like that's it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think of writing as a trade skill, and it's like carpentry or plumbing or anything, isn't it? So it's like if you're a carpenter, you could build a doghouse, you could build a human house, you could build a skyscraper, because it's the same nuts and bolts of putting it together. And writing is too. You could write a YA book, you could write a mystery book. You could write, a piece for a paper, a newspaper, in your journalism career, a magazine. It's the same ability to tell a great story and make these people, the subject, relatable to readers.
The problem is marketing, I think. Not the problem, but the obstacle is marketing, and I can understand that, because I go into a bookshop as a consumer. There's loads of books. I just want to know by the cover and the author's name what I'm getting, but and so if I go to my agent and say, oh, I've written a YA, I don't think she'd be doing cartwheels delighted about it. But I think I think it's okay to branch out and take a chance. And anyway, people use pen names and stuff, but I used to worry a lot about that, about the pressure to stay in your lane and write the same kind of book. But I don't think you can have longevity in this career if you only do things to order, which I felt a real pressure to do at the beginning, but less so now.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually interviewed Dean Koontz last Tuesday, and he was saying that when his career really took off is when he stopped doing what the publisher and the marketing people were telling him to do and writing within the box that they sort of created for him. And they were like, this is what sells. And his books were doing okay until then, but then he just had to follow his heart. He just had to rip through those constraints and, fly free as Dean. And I'm saying that, not Dean. He probably would not say that. Dean's like, stop misquoting me. But that's when that book would just took off, because he was writing with an authenticity and with a realness, and people could feel that and resonated with them on the page. And that clicked in my brain because people can sense that energy.
Yeah, and he's writing with his heart. I mean, the reason I was writing a book that I scrapped for after 6 months was that I was trying to write a book that was exactly like the last book I'd written, and I could not do that. And so then I wrote Three Little Treats in 3 months because it was the book I wanted to write. And so, yeah, I definitely think there's something to that, but it's hard, because writing is your job as well. And of course you want to keep getting work and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just think you have to follow your heart and hope for the best.
I love that. So in this book, well, first of all, what's the inspiration? Do you know where it came from? Did you see something? Did you experience something? Did something happen in your Dublin neighborhood? Or did it just arrive as a fully fledged idea and it just,
two bits. One I just had this, I was on holidays in Ireland with my boyfriend at the time, and I just had this total image of two women sitting in their houses. It was the road I grew up on in my head, sitting in their houses across the road from each other, and both had just moved onto the road, and both had kind of skeletons in their closet and in their background that had brought them to the road. And I instantly could see them sitting in their houses talking to their family members, and I knew what the connection was. And in the book, that connection isn't revealed until near the end. I mean, the rest of the story, there's so much more that I didn't know, but I had that. And then the other inspiration was my mom and dad still live in the house that I grew up on, and my mom is in the neighborhood WhatsApp group, and it's called like ladies poker or something. It's all the women who live on the road, and it's supposed to be to organize their poker games, but it is not to organize their poker games. It's to like gossip about everything that's going on in the road and everyone. And so occasionally I would look through these messages and I was like, these are so good, like they're just gold. They were so dramatic with the smallest concerns, you know what I mean? Because it's just about the goings on in a road, but like everything was very dramatic and it was lovely. Now they weren't as bitchy as the ones that I put in the book because I had to spice it up a bit, but like a lot of the concerns are the same. So like someone found a hole in their garden, so then there was a belief that there was a rat on the road. Someone else found a hole, so now the rat was rampant and everyone was putting down rat poisoning and stuff like that, you know. And so like it's one little thing and then it gets totally out of control. Or like someone had stolen the wheels off a car. I didn't even know that was a thing people did, but wheels are worth something. The tires, so they, in the middle of the night, it's a fancy car that was parked on the road and someone had come up in the middle of the night and got the wheels off in 5 minutes, and someone had security footage. So this was the talk of the WhatsApp group for a week, you know. So I just like, I loved that stuff. And so I wanted to make WhatsApp a big part, neighborhood WhatsApp a big part of it. And so I put in these conversations. And so they were the two starting points. And I didn't know exactly where it was going to go from there, but that's what made me start writing.
I love that. I love that. Margaret is wondering, what kind of humor, if any, would you say is in Three Little Truths? Again, having received that praise that you are very funny from Booklist and Publishers Weekly. Tell us about that.
Okay, so that's the thing. And that's the thing with the cover, right? I love this cover, like I said, so much. But you would not think this book is funny from that cover, I don't think, right? It looks kind of quite serious. Beautiful but serious, and the book is funny, and I just feel like they did such a good job and the best job they could have done, but it's the one thing that maybe doesn't get across. There's definitely humor in it. If you don't want humor, not the book for you. If you do want humor, it is the book for you. I mean, it's not slapsticky, it's like, you know, like suburban people just being a little bit ridiculous, as we can all be. And so, yeah, I think it's that slightly deadpan humor that I think Irish writers generally do very well. People ask that, like my book before this, Grace After Henry, was about a woman whose partner has just died in a bike accident at the beginning of the book, and she's trying to move on without him, and then someone comes into her life. But and that, it was actually quite funny as well, even though that premise doesn't sound funny. But I do think, if I can toot my own horn slightly, that I am good at balancing the light with the dark. And I think that's slightly a national trait. Like some of the best jokes I have heard in my life were at Irish funerals. Like, it's just, like, it is when all the best jokes are brought out, you know? And I just think it's a cultural thing, like, that we are funny when things are a little bit dark. And so, yeah, the book is funny.
I love that. I love that.
That's for Margaret and anyone else to decide, but yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And it's so true. And over here, Margaret's reminding me, we have Nextdoor, which is the same as WhatsApp, but it's by your neighborhood. And so you can join Nextdoor. And it is very funny. My friend Amy lives in New York, and there was this drama about who owned the red cat. There was a red cat who was going around and eating everyone else's food. And who was the cat? And they started calling him Rusty, and Rusty the cat was very mischievous, and he was doing all these terrible things, and he wasn't wearing a collar, and blah, blah, blah. And then somebody posted a photo of Rusty sneaking in their yard, and Amy realized with horror that it was her cat. But she didn't want to admit it because she didn't want to be like, you know, that was me.
We had a big, on where I live now, our resident group or whatever has had a big who owns this cat thing for ages. That's been going on for ages. But we still don't know the answer. She has a collar. Her name is Penny, but we don't know where she came from. There's no more information. That's interesting. I didn't know there was Nextdoor. Right. That's even better, probably. Because one of the great things since this book came out in the UK and in Ireland is I have gotten so many messages with people, like on social media or through my website or whatever, people just sending me screen grabs from their resident WhatsApp groups. It's like, I was like, sometimes writing the book, I thought, oh, I've gone too far. I've made this too ridiculous. But then when I saw some of the stuff people get, I was like, no, I did not go far enough. Like one woman, her resident group, I just love this so much. There were builders doing work on a house in the estate. And so when they left at the end of the day, there was some muck on their tires. So there was a little bit of muck on the road, like a tiny bit, the amount that would come off a tire. She wanted them to wash their wheels and wash the road every day after their building work. Mental. Anyway.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. That is hilarious. And as for your mysterious cat, you could do what Amy's neighbor did, which is to write a note, wrap it around the cat's collar, and then when the cat eventually goes home to the cat's house, Amy then received a note that was like, "Hello, whose cat is this? He is eating all my food." And
that's great. That is a really good idea. We don't mind. We like having the cat come. My son loves him, but we just don't know where he comes from. But we could totally do that. And the cat could like carry messages back and forth. That is actually a very good plot for a romance, can I just say.
We have a suggestion. Could you put these screen grabs on your Twitter feed to share them with all of us? I think that's a great idea.
I'd have to go back and ask permission before I like start outing people's neighbors. I guess.
I could their name.
Yeah, I could. That's true. I could scribble out their names, and then it wouldn't really matter. I can look into this.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I love it. Eithne, what is your favorite scene in your book? What is the scene that you love the most?
This is the only book I have that answer to. So there is a chapter, and I actually think I remember the number, even though I wrote this book so long ago, because chapter 22. Yeah. Okay, so it's a flashback scene. It's the only flashback scene, and it explains why Martha who's the main character, came to live on Pine Road. What the thing is that happened to her that brought them there, and the circumstances, why the circumstances are so weird, and also explains things about the behavior of her husband and her daughter, which don't seem to make total sense up until that point. It's a real action scene, which I loved writing. It's got a lot of heart, and it also I was just waiting to tell the reader, because I was like, I know you're confused, but wait, I'm about to tell you, this is why. But yeah, don't skip forward to the chapter, please. But
I'm going to forward to that chapter. I love it.
So I love that chapter. I wrote it in about 2 hours, which was just so quick, because the whole time I knew exactly what had happened, and I just couldn't wait to tell the reader. Yeah.
I love it. And how did you decide to put it in chapter 22? I mean, because that's something I'm always struggling with as a writer. You know, you don't want to give it away on page 2 where everyone's like, oh, why, I figured this out, but you don't want them to get to page 450 and then to be like, what? So where do you put those reviews?
I know.
Where do you put those actions?
I think I moved it around a couple of times. And basically the reason is it's to do with the reveal at the end of chapter 21. So at the end of chapter 21, it's like dun dun, and then chapter 22 goes back and explains the dun dun line. If you know what I mean. If I can use a Law and Order analogy, dun dun.
Yes, you can totally. Law and Order analogies are very welcome here. I'm a huge fan of Law and Order. I bet we all are, because it's such a great police procedural.
I love it.
I love it. That's fantastic. And I actually looked up what makes that sound, and I believe it has something to do with, I forget now, monks' shoes.
Monks. Oh, right. Oh,
yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. Oh my gosh, amazing. So were there any titles? You said that the title is actually a bit hard to say with the. Yeah,
I was saying that to you before. Yeah, the Irish, because the way people in other countries often slag the Irish accent, and it's very true, is 33 and 3/3, 33 and 3/3. We find the TH very difficult, which is why my name can be difficult, and I get Eithne instead of Eithne. But anyway, so it was my American, I couldn't come up with a title. My UK editor didn't have a title, my agent, but my American editor came up with 3 little truths. And I mean, I just couldn't have picked that because it's too many THs for me, and I have to say it slowly. But I think it's perfect. I am trying to remember. Oh, so the road in the book is called Pine Road. And so my working title was the Pine Road Project. I don't think I ever thought it would be called that, because it made it sound like maybe it was something scientific, like a lab or something, I don't know. But that's what it was in my head the whole time I was writing. I'm really, really bad at titles. There were a few days we were all sending back and forth like 10 different titles, and so Tara, my editor, suggested that, and I liked it, and the UK agreed, and because sometimes you can get books with different titles in different territories.
Yes.
And I would like to avoid that where possible. I mean, the foreign editions can change it, obviously, but for both sides of the Atlantic, preferably I want everyone on the same page. So yeah.
So besides the Pine Road project, was there anything, did any title, is there one for you that, is there the one that got away that you kind of really loved? And
I can't remember. I could look that up, but I can't remember. And it's annoying because at the time it matters so much to you and you're ready to like, you know,
yes.
fight it out. And then time passes and you're like, what did I even want to call it? You know, like its name just is its name. I know there were, it was like always a play on Pine Road. But I mean, it was nothing brilliant, you know. I wasn't about to, you know, start drawing blood over it. So yeah, sorry, I can't really remember.
No worries. So, Eithne, as a career journalist and a multiply published author, what is some of your favorite advice for aspiring writers?
Well, the thing I usually say is, and I have to say it to myself as well, is to start early in the morning. I'm not a morning person, though I yearn to be.
Yeah.
But well, my son now wakes up at 5:15, so I don't have a choice. But like, I hate him for the first 45 minutes that we're up. But no, I think that start writing before the day gets in and starts demanding things of you. And like that can be, so I don't when I'm proper in writing, I don't check my phone in the morning. I will get 2 hours done before I will go and check my phone, because I can hear the news, I have the radio on, but if I start reading about the news, I can get anxious about it, or I'm on Twitter and someone has tagged me in something and then I get distracted, and before you know it, it's half an hour later. And also you've got that angsty feeling, even if you can't pinpoint what it's about. And so I try not to look at any of that, and I try to start as soon as I can. And basically before you start to doubt yourself. For me anyway, the biggest problem with writing is doubt or self-confidence. And I do better work always before lunchtime than after lunchtime, I think, as a result of that.
Wow.
Start early. And I guess also I need goals. I don't always hit them. I often don't hit them, but like I try to write 1,500 words a day, but that's me. But it could be 1,000, it could be 2,000, whatever your thing is. But for a set period, maybe for 4 weeks, then you take a break, you look at what you've got, whatever. Just little goals. I think I am the kind of person that loves ticking things off a list. Like I will make the list just so I can tick that off straight away. I'm a ticker. So I love saying, okay, today I did what I said I would. Tick. Yeah. So start early, set little goals.
And I think you're bringing up something that resonates with all of us, which is that it's very easy to get distracted. So I know I often will tell myself, you know what, I'm just going to wake up, have my morning tea and check the news or check Twitter, check social media, and then just get that stuff out of the way so that then I can sort of clear the decks and be focused to write. That's what I tell myself every day. And this is apparently a lie, a fallacy that I continue to believe, because as you said, you get sucked down, and the news right now is so anxiety inducing. It's so terrifying. That it's very hard to transition out of that anxiety state. And then, as you said, someone tags you, and then oh, I should retweet. Oh, I should retweet with a photo. Oh, where's that photo? And then you blink, and half an hour, 45 minutes has gone by, and
Absolutely.
Now you get sucked down. So you don't even pick up your phone. You just get right to it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And the thing, exactly what you say is exactly right. You think, and I think, oh, I'm going to clear that out of the way. But that's not, it's easier. It's easier to deal with a tweet, because even though it makes you feel worse, it only takes a few seconds. Or to read a news story, it takes 2 minutes. But to write a book takes months, years, so it's not more appealing to be able to go, oh, I dealt with Twitter, tick, than I wrote a book, tick. So absolutely, it's like a small manageable task, but actually it makes us feel worse. But it's so hard not to check in on what's going on, not to reach for your phone.
Exactly. Margaret's saying, but what about taking the dog out? Or for you, I guess, your kid.
Yeah. Well, actually, I find that great, like playing with him. And when my parents are away, we mind their dog. And I love that excuse to go for the walk in the morning, especially if I'm working from home, which I always am now, because it feels like I went on my commute to work and I brought the dog, because I used to, back in the old world, I used to cycle to work, and I love that separation of home and work and just that little bit of exercise. Actually, I think taking the dog out is great, but you need to not consume the news. Well, you can do what you want, but I need to not consume the news whilst walking the dog, just in your head, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So and then one more question from me, and that is, what do you think, and this is something I ask every single one of my guests, what do you think the number one most important tool as a writer is to writing a page-turning, suspenseful novel, the one that keeps people up till 3 a.m. thinking, just one more chapter, I have to read just one more chapter. How do you do it?
Okay, let me think. Because I haven't figured this out yet. I mean, I'm doing my best, but I can always get better. So I think that the one thing I have achieved that helps is to get rid of the ego. You know, when you've written a paragraph and you just think it's beautiful, or a bit of dialogue that is so funny, you're like, well, no matter what, I'm keeping that dialogue, or I'm keeping that paragraph. That usually means they have to go, because you're thinking about it as a paragraph or as a line, not as part of the whole story. And I think if you're going to keep the pace going, you can't get segued into beautiful paragraphs. You know, you got to keep going on the pace. And you need to, when you read back, or when I read back over it, I try and read it as if I'm not me, and there's no ego, and I'm so cruel. And I put an X through all the things that need to go. It will probably take me another week before I can get up the guts to actually press delete on that stuff. But I can say, yes, it's beautiful, but it does not serve the story. It does not serve the story. And I also, myself, a thing I'm still learning personally, is the beginning of the book and the beginning of chapters. What I do is I establish the scene. You don't need to establish the scene. So I'm always going back and seeing that I've done that, and just cut it, get right into the action, start the chapter on action, start the book on action. I mean, you know, you need to take a breath every now and again, but often establishing paragraphs aren't necessary. You know, it's more for you to get into the scene. That's why you've written them. But actually, I often find if I delete the first paragraph of the chapter, it still makes total sense, and it's actually a little bit punchier, personally.
Oh, wow. I love that. So you do end up writing them, but then you go back and you mark them for deletion.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
putting yourself, you're easing yourself in.
Yeah. It's like, we should delete this. It's okay, Eithne. This is Eithne to Eithne. It's okay, Eithne. You can have a week to really think it over. So, yeah. And then, gone. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been absolutely amazing to host you, Eithne. Congratulations on your incredible, incredible book. Again, I just have to shout it one more time from the rooftops. Pop Sugar 21 most exciting releases hitting bookshelves. Betches, I freaking love Betches. Making the fall 2020 reading list, and that is high praise because they are Betches. No, they have very high standards and they are incredible. I love all of their book picks. CNN, freaking CNN, including your book in their best books of October roundup. And again, earning incredible, incredible praise from Publishers Weekly, Book List, Kirkus, and other authors, including Joe Spain, Samantha Downing, Emma Rouse, Bunmi Laditon, Liz Nugent, Jane Corey. I could go on and on and on, but everyone praising your twisty plotting, your incredible subplots, your suspense, your humor, and again saying that so many people saying if you loved Big Little Lies, and I know we all did, you will love this book, and you can buy it today through our very special partnership through bookshop.org, and support independent bookstores, which are so important and need our support right now. So Eithne, I want to thank you so much for joining us all the way from Dublin.
Can I take a photo of you before we go?
Oh my gosh, of course. Yes, okay. I love that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. And again, I want to thank you, my partner in crime, Margaret Pinard, another member of our Blaze team, my partner in crime. And she's an incredible author as well. And she specializes in writing about Celtic culture. She loves Irish culture. She loves Celtic culture, Celtic history. She has lived there. She loves Ireland as much as I do, maybe even more. I don't know if that's possible, but she does. So I want to thank Margaret, my partner in crime, for everything over there. Eithne, we've been so honored to host you. Congratulations on all the incredible press that you have earned. And I cannot wait to read your book, which is now available in the US. Yay.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody
it's 8:45 here, so I'm going to have a glass of wine to celebrate.
That sounds absolutely perfect. And we will see you next time here on A Mighty Blaze. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.